we had a great chance connecting over tea and coffee before our podcast. So I'm really excited to digging in and recreating the amazing conversation we were having. So why don't we get started with, explain who Tarik Ali was before Student Works.
Yeah, Tarik Ali. So 10 years ago. I think one of the biggest changes for me coming into that program was I used to be so focused on checking the boxes of the path that I thought I needed to be on to
Right.
achieve like happiness.
Right.
I think that came from I did well in school. I was able to get good grades, and I think when that happens, or when it happened for me, you start to believe that okay, I'm going to keep checking these boxes, and
Yeah.
you end up kind of staying in a box, and you start believing that okay, if I do that, I'm going to achieve what I want to achieve, and wasn't very was more risk averse back then.
Yeah.
Felt that, hey, if I'm going to achieve X, I need to do what other people are doing. Let me focus on external achievements. And I think that was a great time for me to enter the program, because we were saying at the coffee place just now, like, I don't think I could tell you any stories about my classes at U of T, but I could tell you a bunch about that summer at Student Works, and everything that we learned through that. So big change. I can't wait to dive into. We're gonna go deep today. I can't wait to dive into everything that we talk about.
Exactly. Me too. And it is really significant how, I think it's very common that we think there's a road that we should go to, and we think that road's going to make us happy, and that, I don't think that's true. And we'll end up talking more about that, that there's a road we all need to find for ourselves. I think that's what's most true.
Yeah, it's a shame we only have 1 hour, because we could spend 5 hours on this. But I'm pumped.
Yeah.
I'm pumped.
So why don't you think back to, what do you still use from your time at Student Works?
I think the number one thing, we talked about this, that the client centricity, the building the trust in someone else. When you're in this program and you're 18, 19 years old, and you're painting someone's house, or you're helping someone with their home, it's such a personal thing for them. And I just got my place painted for the first time a year ago, and now I realize like how big a deal it is to have someone come into your home, the level of trust that I needed in the person that was coming in. When I was running that business 10 years ago, I learned that it wasn't necessarily about who's the best painter. It wasn't necessarily about, hey, is it the best equipment we're using? It was about the human to human trust that we had to build in order to get people to say, hey, you know what, Tarik, I will have you come in. I trust your team. That, to me, whether we talk about my work at Accenture, whether we talk about even the relationships that I've built in my life and how I approach life, I think so much of it goes back to that experience at Student Works. And it's just about, for me, it's not about me, it's about what does this other person need. And I think that's carried me a long way in my own development and how I see the world.
Yeah. And so why don't we talk about, like, for you to do Student Works, it was a risk. It was outside the box of getting high marks and here's the road, here's the path. What did that do? And what did overcoming that risk or winning at that risk, who did Tarik then become?
Yeah. And I think the program is a really, for me at the time, like a safe way to take a risk, because the worst case, there really isn't a worst case. Like it's a gain no matter what. I had a moment in the summer before I even knew what Student Works was, where, and I think we talked about this last time, I was in my dorm room over the summer because I had to stay at U of T to take a summer class because I was switching my major.
Right.
And I had a moment where I was thinking like, hey, if I keep doing what I'm doing, if I just stick to trying to get good grades, if I keep doing things the way that I'm doing, where do I end up a few years from now? And I didn't love the picture that was coming in my mind. I sat down with a notebook, kind of like this one here, and I wrote out, hey, 5 years from now, who is Tarik?
Okay.
What is the perfect Friday morning for Tarik? And it's not just about what job do I have or where do I live. It's just, how am I feeling? What do I care about? What are my values? And I started to just feel like, hey, I think there's some work I need to do to go outside my comfort zone. So when the Student Works opportunity landed on a seat in a lecture hall that I walked into
Right.
the first day of school in second year. There's this thing where when you tell your brain what you think you're looking for, then when it finds it, it's like an aha moment, but you've set it up the whole time. And I had set that moment up without knowing it for a few months. And so um, that is what attracted me to this. And I think going through the program in a way where we had the formal training, and yes, you're running your own business, but we have, coaches like you have a support system. It helped me experiment in a way where I was able to free up because I knew that, hey, this is a risk, but there's no downside. Coming out of that, I felt a noticeable change in how I approached risk, how I thought about my career, how I thought about what mattered to me once I left the program. So that's a big turning point for me in my life, which is why when you asked me to come on the show today, I was so fired up because my association to you, Chris, when I think back, is like the facilitator of that turning point for me. So I greatly appreciate that.
Well, you're most welcome, and thanks for sharing. And unfortunately, with Tarik, we only got 1 year together, but we're making still the best of it and still staying connected, which is
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Because one of the things we say in our program is when people are getting really great marks and the banks are a possibility or consultings are a possibility or there's an engineering program or whatever, there really is the time when those big companies are coming on campus and looking to recruit the top students on campus. And so you took that opportunity to go work at Accenture that summer. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. And I want to go into the whole thing about how these big companies come on
Yes.
campus and how it makes, I think, a lot of people feel like, hey, if I'm not going after one of these companies, am I on the wrong path? There's a whole thing there.
Yeah.
Now, I do think coming out of Student Works, I found consulting in a way that was very aligned to me. Like I discovered it and I entered it not because I felt that it was the right thing to do for me. Sorry, I entered it not because I thought it was the right thing to do because other people are doing it. I entered it because it was very aligned to how I wanted to start. And I think it was interesting, like sitting through that recruiting, the number of stories I pulled from the experience at Student Works, whether it's, hey, learning how to canvas going door to door, learning how to build trust with a client in the first 2.5 seconds of them opening the door in
Right.
-10 degrees when they don't want to be at the door, but you're knocking on the door in your boots. Learning how to manage a project, right? You've said that, hey, this is going to cost X. We bring a team, and you're managing all those dynamics and managing the relationship. I think that really resonated with those firms because it's different than I think the safety box you often get in other internships. I can't speak to all internships, but it really gave me some stories and some experiences and a deep kind of quiet confidence within that, hey, like I know I can run projects. I know I can build relationships with people. Like I've done it before.
For sure, for sure. And again, I personally am just I think very highly of the whole consulting industry and think it really is a great spot to start. Really learn, get a taste of a lot of different industries, really learn inside of businesses, not just one that you end up working with, but many, many, many businesses. So for me, I think, very obviously very hard. It's great to get a huge brand on my resume early on in the season. So in my career, so you're right. Sometimes people may be doing it for not the right reasons. We don't want that. And on the other hand, there's a lot of reasons to go and for good reasons to be attracted to an amazing brand like Accenture. So one of the things that was great that we were talking about that I really didn't know is just all the things that Accenture really is. Because I think a bunch of people, I don't know, and I know a lot because I'm just kind of a business nerd. So who is Accenture and what does Accenture do for its clients?
Super unique company. We have probably 700,000 people that work for Accenture around the world. And I think of it kind of as this open playground where you really get to choose your own path. And the reason is so Accenture will advise Fortune 500 companies on a lot of topics that are tied to strategy and technology. But we cover every industry, whether it's banks or consumer products or telecom or oil and gas or government. So you can pick your path from an industry standpoint. And then we do things like end to end. So strategy, we help implement processes. We actually have technical teams building products for companies. We have the world's largest creative design agency called Accenture Song. We have a whole team focused on data and AI, generative AI, that I think they invested like $3 billion into that team last year. We have an innovation team, which I'm part of, and so when you enter Accenture, you get this it's a double-edged sword, because on one sense, no one's telling you, hey, you must do this. It's on you to decide what you need to do, which is scary for some people. But the flip side is it's kind of your oyster. You get to pick and choose your path. You get to have some influence on the work that you do. And I think that really helps people in their first couple of years at the firm understand, hey, you know what? I loved working for these clients. I loved solving these types of problems. And you can specialize over time. I've stayed more so kind of a generalist. That's my own path. But I think the place is structured in a really cool way where whether you spend 2 years there, you spend 8 years like I have, you keep learning new things at a place like that. So I'm very fortunate that that I've spent the entirety of my career at a place like that so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally get that. And so why don't we talk about the choices that you made and just kind of understanding, where you are with your career path so far.
Yeah. Where should we start? The beginning?
Yeah. Sorry, the beginning.
The beginning.
Yes.
Yeah. So your first couple years, you're very much part of a team delivering a project, which means your leaders have said, hey, Tarik, you're on a team of 3 or 4 people. You'll have some middle management working with you. This is the scope of the project. This is the tasks we need to do. This is what we need to create at the end of 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 3-4 months. And you're given this on a plate, and you're working with your team to, do the analysis, understand the problem, and build the materials.
Right.
I did that for about 3-4 years. And as you progress through analyst to consultant to manager, you kind of go up that pyramid where instead of being the person focusing on one thing, you're now overseeing people on 3-4 different things. I had a moment when I got to manager where I felt that, in between my projects, I got to work on sales opportunities to help sell the next project. And I really enjoyed that. Something deep within me was like, you know what? Like, I've done this thing where I'm given what the scope is. I kind of want to be at the table with our leaders, helping sell new projects and solve the problems and create what that scope needs to be. So I found a group at Accenture, among the hundreds of groups at Accenture, that gave me an opportunity to focus on that, right? In a sales type of role in innovation. And I've spent the past 3 years working with a really cool team in that space. Shall we go into, I'll pause there for the Accenture.
Yeah,
kinda,
no. I just and how did your experience at StudentWorks assist you in accelerating and doing well in that area?
So I think when you are fully accountable for the end to end at StudentWorks, whether it's designing your approach for your business, learning the painting industry, canvassing, getting leads, following up with leads, negotiating deals, estimating projects, delivering projects, you're accountable for your painter's payroll and hiring. When you are going through that and you've seen the whole end to end from a standpoint where you are the person that's accountable, in a way, once you get to a big company where you're one piece of that puzzle, you kind of feel like, hey, I've been the person that everyone calls when things go bad. I can do this, right? I can take a scope. I can do this. Yes, I need to learn how to do certain things, but a lot of the scariness of being new at a company was gone because I felt like I had experienced something so unique through the program. So I think it gave me a bit of an edge when it came to, I think my confidence coming into the firm. And I think when you feel confident and you have that focus on being the person that people can trust, whether it's with a slide deck or whether it's building a pitch or delivering a pitch, when you can build that trust with other humans around you, I think good things happen. And that became my focus for a long time. It's been a very, I think, simple recipe that carried me, thankfully, pretty far.
Yeah, and again, it's like that customer centric piece. People talk about it. Yes, customers number one, and I just don't think people really get how at world class firms, at the best companies in the world, the customer's really number one. That's really what it is. Like, how do we solve these customers' problems? For us, the problem that our customers, our amazing young students are entering ours. How do I distinguish myself? How can I become the next generation of a business leader? That's what excites people, and that's what the problem we're trying to solve. And Accenture has all sorts of unique problems that they're trying to solve, and it's like really listening and fact finding and talking and understanding and bringing in all the amazing resources that you have at Accenture to solve those. And that seems really very exciting.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's when you can mix customer centricity with authenticity, because I think there's a difference, right? There's one thing to say, hey, we care about the customer. That gets tested, right? When a project might be behind or when there's a disagreement on what scope might be, whether it's at Student Works or whether it's at Accenture or any place. The integrity in those moments, that is what reveals the actual level of customer centricity. And I've just always tried to take an approach of it's not about me. I mean, us having this conversation right now, I'm not used to being the one talking for 80% of the time. Like,
Yes.
it's not. I'm not used to it being about me. But it's just not about me. It's not about us. It's about like what can we do for the people we're serving. And I just enjoy going through life thinking of it that way. I just think it makes me feel at ease and at peace.
Yeah. No, and just for our leaders listening, again, why that is Tarik's always asking the questions and fact finding and trying to understand. And again, it's not a manipulation. No, it's just if I'm talking, I can't get to understand what the challenge and problem they're facing so that we can go and solve it. So it's really awesome. And I know that's also part of what the second thing you've discovered, or sorry, not the second thing, but another topic that we're going to talk about here, because you've discovered lots of things at Accenture, but about coaching. And so I know coaching's become something that you've really loved and enjoyed. And so why don't you share about that and how you discovered it at Accenture?
Yeah, and let's start with maybe the definition of coaching, because I think when we
Perfect.
hear the word coaching, I think about Bill Belichick, I think about
Yeah.
NFL coaches, I think about people yelling at players, or I think about, in a workplace, you'll hear often, hey, let me give you some coaching, Chris. Why don't you sit with your notebook and listen, and let me tell you what I think you should do. And that's really giving advice.
Yes.
Coaching is the opposite. When you're coaching, your job isn't to try to tell the other person what they should do. My job as a coach is to help you, Chris, or whoever I'm working with, get to the point that they want to be by listening and understanding, hey, how are you wired? What's going through your mind? What are your beliefs? What are your internal systems? What is keeping you from getting to the place that you deep down want to be? And for me to do that, I can't come in with limited context on you, how you see the world, and start telling you, hey, Chris, you know what? I think you should do this actually. I know you're super stressed out about your business. Why don't stop for a sec? Like, let me tell you, it's the complete opposite, right? And so I discovered that, and I'll use the word beauty and the word magic and power of coaching by being coached accidentally. We talked about the time when I was the person doing projects at Accenture and I wanted to pivot into sales, and that was a big pivot for me. And as part of that journey, I sat down with a couple different mentors who, proceeded to say, hey, Tarik, okay, great. Here's what I think you should do. Never felt good coming out of those conversations. I actually never felt more clear on what I thought I needed to do. And I happened to contact a coach friend of mine, and we had a conversation, and I was expecting him to show up similarly and say, hey, Tarik, like, you've had your 3 minutes. Now let me tell you what I think you should do. And it was different. I got to talk as the person being coached for 90% of the time. We uncovered more in 25 minutes where he gave me the space to untangle what was in my mind, my fears about pivoting, my concerns, my own doubt. Hey, I've crushed it on this side of the business. What if I don't crush it over here? And I felt clearer after 30 minutes of that than I had in all the mentoring calls that I had been through. So that's how I first discovered the power of coaching. We also, a few years later at Accenture, we brought a coach in to coach our CEO. I had the fortune of being on that call. So 40 of us are on this call. We're off camera. We're on mute. You have a coach and you have our CEO. And Chris, in 40 minutes, the way this lady was able to get our CEO to feel so open and safe in this conversation, talking about his concerns about the business, his own self-reflection of his leadership, the things that he thought he had to improve for his people. This was during COVID, right? So we had a ton of stuff around COVID and people feeling, very stressed out. it was unbelievable. And it was that day that I decided that, you know what, there's something in me pulling me towards this. I think I can do what that guy did for me a few years ago. I think I can do what this lady is doing for the CEO, because I've always been the person that people come to and just open up and tell everything, and I'm grateful for that. And I like to think that there's something that I do to evoke that. So that is my initial journey on how I discovered this whole new world.
Wow. So why don't we walk back? Two things pop for me. So that CEO having that type of a conversation in front of 40 people, being that authentic and vulnerable, like, wow, that really seems very impressive to me.
It was shocking. And I think about, you think about these leaders, you think about these CEOs or these founders, and I get to sit with a lot of them, right? These founders, and they've got their own companies, and they have to be on all day for their employees, for their investors, for their boards of directors. They have to show a certain face. And so often we think about the well-being and the personal development of folks in the organization, but sometimes we forget about the well-being and the development of the leaders at the top, because their job is to take care of the people that work with them and for them. And so giving a leader that NDA protected space where it's like, hey, anything goes here. We are under contract that you can say anything you want. Giving them that space to actually work through the things that they believe are limiting themselves, their concerns about their business, their fears, their doubts, or even just, hey, Tarik, like, I want to take this business to the next level, but I haven't taken the time to actually sit and get my thoughts in order. I find so much meaning in that. And I found that if you structure it the right way and you coach the right way, you can get so much out of a 30, 40-minute conversation. And the more I do it, the more addicting it feels. And you can see the smile on my face as I reflect on this, because it fills my cup.
Yes.
It fills my cup, and it feels so aligned to who I am and who I want to be.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so part of it is, let's reflect back on your personal coaching. So in the questions that they were able to ask you, and really in the space, in the silence, what were you able to discover? That's really what happened. It wasn't what they told you. It was really what you were able to discover, I imagine.
Yeah. So if we take the example of my pivot into the sales side, I think the surface level was me thinking about promotion cycles, or me thinking about salary changes, or things that felt very surface level. And I entered the other coffee chats kind of talking at that level. When the coach was able to see, hey, Tarik, like, as you say that, it just looks like there's something deeper. Like, what else might there be?
Mm-hmm.
Silence for like 10 seconds. I'm sitting there, and I'm like, if I sit here silently enough, he'll keep talking, right? And he doesn't. He's giving me that space. And what we realized was it was more about my own fears about, being able to perform at a level that I thought, was up to the standard that I built. We talked about my perfectionist tendencies when I was younger, right? And so these types of changes, these types of risks were, at a time for me, scary. So when we got to the root of it, which was fear of change and fear of, hey, like, how am I going to perform? We got to actually look at, hey, objectively, what is the worst case scenario here? What do you actually believe, Tarik, to be true about the situation? I was like, oh, well, actually, there's actually no real downside, because worst case, I come back in 6 months and go back to that side, right? And that was the click for me. I needed to believe, based on how I'm wired and what I needed at the time, I needed to believe that things were going to be okay. And that's why that worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's true is we all need to believe that. And again, a lot of times, just some great questions, and I know you were reflecting that you ask yourself those questions quite often, and it's like, oh, you're right, I will be okay, and then I can go and do this, and that, again, what's the real risk here? So and I know one of the things that you did as part of this, passion project, is you went and got certified. So why don't you tell us about that and what that is? Because I could imagine, and I know in our program we develop so many leaders that a lot of them find the coaching really exciting. Obviously for me, that's I'm the head coach, so that's what I find exciting in my life. But so what was that that certification process.
Yeah, and you talk about me coaching myself. I'm the guy that you'll see walking, talking out loud to myself because I'm literally asking myself questions. So
Right.
I'm sure a bunch of people have said that. What's that guy doing talking out loud? But that's I love doing that. And the certification process. So look, I hit a point where I was like, look, if I'm gonna do this, let's do it right. And there's a governing body called the International Coaching Federation. They will accredit a bunch of different programs, and I found one that just matched my schedule, and I loved the instructor that I got to work with. She's actually my executive coach now, so funny how that works out. And this was a 6-month program last year, Monday nights, in the evenings, couple hours a week, and you learn the fundamentals, you practice live. They really test you. They really show you different scenarios of how what can come up in coaching sessions and how to handle things. And those 6 months, I entered it not knowing, Chris, like, am I gonna like this? Will this shut the door for me on this type of a thing? But I absolutely loved it. And the fact that I now have my coach because of this program made it all the worthwhile to me. But not having that would have been it was a necessary step for sure for me to explore it through some sort of a formal program like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then my understanding is Accenture had coaching opportunities for you, which is really, really incredible. Another incredible thing about Accenture.
Yeah, it's funny how that just things kind of sometimes piece together, and I think so much of this theme here is when you can when you can take the time to get really clear on what you care about, the type of life you want to live, the impact you want to have on people, the things you stand for, what you want to be known for. When you get clear on that, then I think your brain can start to identify things when they pop up. So this, me knowing how much I loved coaching people, I happened to come across an opportunity at Accenture where we have a global roster of executive coaches. And I found that because I was looking for it. And so we acquire about 20 companies a year, and these startups that get acquired by Accenture, they have their founders and their executives, and they are now badged as Accenture. And so through that process, we offer them exec coaching. And so I met with the lead of that program and got through the interview, and now I'd volunteer a good chunk of my time outside work to sit with these leaders. I've got to sit with people we've acquired in Australia and in England, around the world, which has been a really eye-opening opportunity for me. And we talk about my own kind of, journey, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, well, this founder is 20 years more experienced than I am. But it's not about that, right? This is about a human to human connection. I don't care if you're a CEO, a founder, a student. It doesn't matter because we all have a universal things in common with how how our minds work, and that's what coaching is about. So it's been a really interesting experience being part of that team.
No kidding. What a fantastic opportunity. And again, what are some of the, and I think a lot of our young leaders will be surprised by this, but what are some of the things that these amazing executives struggle with? That again, I think good chance people wouldn't know because the masks that they're wearing to actually do their jobs well.
Yeah. And I wish every person could just believe that when they're feeling doubt, or they're feeling like they're coming up on a ceiling, or they're feeling uncertain about something, I wish they would just know that if you look at people that are running incredible companies, or they've crushed it at Accenture and they're getting to partner level, everyone has those things.
Yeah.
Every single person has those things. I get the benefit of being the person that can see that because my job is to help people feel like they can talk about that and work through that. Seeing that has been super eye-opening. And the thing that I focus on when I do executive coaching is this thing I call executive resilience. And it basically focuses on a few different things. Leadership self-mastery, right? So building the internal leadership characteristics so that you can get closer to thinking and behaving as the leader that you want to become. We look at performance, right? So elevating performance ceilings. A lot of these founders, they started with 5 people in a garage.
Right.
And now their roles are completely changing because they have succeeded externally. They got 25 people, things are changing. How do you continue to elevate your performance in ambiguity? Building teams, building and running high performing teams. You know, it's one thing if you're one of three founders and you need to make sure you're doing your job well. How do you empower 20 other people that work for you? We look at navigating through change and uncertainty. This is scary for a lot of people, whether you're, you know, picking a university that you're going to, whether you're deciding, hey, am I going to join Student Works, whether you're picking an internship, whether you're picking a job after school, whether you're picking a partner for life, right? Or whether you are running a company where things are changing and growing. The human response is so universal, right? Change is scary. Uncertainty is scary. So we work through that. And then the last one, which I am super passionate about, is investing in wellness and vitality. Burnout, being stuck in a rut. If you think that these high flying founders who have gotten a bunch of funding, they're growing their companies, if you think that they're just on all day and that they're robots and they never get tired, I wish I could convey to everyone watching this, like, you are not alone if you feel that. And it's so common. And I think what I love so much about the role I get to play is I can see it and I can then spread the word that, hey, you're okay if you feel this stuff. You're okay. There's nothing wrong with you, right? So we really look at building resilience within each of those things. And Chris, it's not about finding band-aid solutions, right? It's about pinpointing, hey, like, what is it specifically that you're trying to get to here? What do you believe to be true about right now? And then let's look very objectively at the things that you think are keeping you from being there. What's actually true here? Right. And working through that over a period of days, weeks, months. And last thing I'll say, you can tell I'm passionate about this because I can't stop talking about it. For me, the looking someone in the eye 3 months later and seeing a difference like in their eyes compared to 3 months before, and them saying, hey, I feel freed up. I feel like the clouds are gone. I feel like I can actually crush it the way I know I can. There's no feeling in the world like that for me. And then that's why I love it so much.
Yeah, no, I can totally understand that. And so I really think, you know, first of all, I think all of those four things are things that our leaders would love to understand more of. And those are things that, you know, we frankly teach a lot and coach a lot, and they get experience at and they try it and then they go get to do it again. But emotional resilience, like what sort of, you know, maybe frameworks can you help share that might be helpful for our leaders that they maybe could pick up on?
Yeah, I think honestly, it all to me comes down to the same kind of overall thing, where if you can be aware that you're feeling stuck, if you have the courage to admit, hey, you know what? I'm not feeling as good as I think I can be. And if you can get really clear on two things. Number one, hey, what would great feel like? If I could guarantee you that you woke up 90 days from now and this entire arena that we're talking about, you had full control over everything and you could wake up feeling exactly as you want to feel and all the circumstances are exactly as you want them to be, what is true about that day? And I'll start every first session I have with someone with that question because I want to understand, hey, if I take all the barriers away and I free you up and you believe that you can do anything that you actually put your mind to, what is true about that day? Because if we can get clear on that, now we're getting very aligned to our internal voice of, hey, Tarik, man, like if you could do that, that's what I want to be doing. Start there. Start with the end is always where we begin. And then I want to get really clear on, hey, well, where do you think you are right now? What do you believe to be true right now? And that's where a lot of stuff comes out. Well, hey, I'm actually worried about this. Or I feel like, you know, Johnny and Sarah at company X are crushing it and I can't stop thinking about what they're doing and I feel like I'm never going to live up to that. Or, hey, I'm terrified of failing. All this type of stuff comes up from people that you wouldn't even expect. And if you can get clear on where you're at and where you want to be, it becomes this process where one by one we start to look at each of those things that you feel like is holding you back. And it's all about finding the objective facts and the truth around those fears and those limiting beliefs. Because so much of our talk track in our minds is clouded with emotion. It's subjective, right? And we think we're being objective, but we really are being subjective with our own limiting beliefs or things like that. So applying objectivity to those things one by one is the process we go through. We might start on barrier number one. We'll work on it. We'll get to some action items. What would one small step take towards this? And then we basically come back, and we come back a week later, and maybe it's something else that feels like the next barrier. So it's that iterative process, but it only works if you're very open with yourself on where you're at, and you're very open with yourself on where you want to be. And it's about bridging that gap.
Awesome, awesome. So it's telling the truth, and it's really one of the things I like to share with people is we're all not really great sometimes on ourselves, on our own, in our room, right? Like like that's like and that's where the bad thoughts can swirl, and the judgments can swirl about what we should do, what we could do. I know we started this podcast actually talking about, hey, what Tarik thought he should do,
Yeah.
right? What he thought he should do with his life, right? And then and again, we imagine that again, a lot of our leaders are like what I think. So knowing now what you know after 10 years, what would you be telling our leaders, or what would you be, not advising, but what sort of experiences would you be sharing about how to look at that?
Yeah. And it's exactly that. It's not advising at all. I think some questions I'd be asking myself is, what matters most to me in the life I want to live? If I was guaranteed to succeed at whatever I chose, what do I want to spend my time doing? Right? If I could work on anything that I want to work on through university and beyond, and no one could ever find out what I was doing, there was no reputational risk whatsoever, what would you want to do? When you fast forward 40 years from now and you're retiring and you're reflecting back on the time that you spent, what do you want to be true? If you think back to the kid you were when you were 4 or 5 years old, what would that person say about each of these questions? And I think different people have different levels of comfort in having these conversations. And I think I've always been someone that, if I felt like there was that gap between what I'm doing and my purpose, I would rather look at it in the face because I feel uncomfortable ignoring it. So I think I had an easier time asking myself these questions. I met so many people. I joined university thinking I wanted to be a doctor. And I think we talked about this last time. I called my parents on day 4 of week 1 of year 1 to say, hey, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm seeing a ton of kids that want to be in med school way more than me. I've been to 4 biology classes. I can't tell you exactly why I feel this, but they want it more than I do. And I can't go through with it, right? We're talking year 1. I've coached and met people that were in year 2 of med school when they realized that they didn't want to be in med school. So it's about, to me, I would say, Tarik, I'm so happy that you at 18 had the self-awareness to ask these questions. And I wish I was asking them even earlier, to be honest. So for everyone listening to this, I think there's so much we've set up here in Canada, the US, where, hey, you got to be on one of 3, 4 paths. If you're not a doctor, if you're not a lawyer, if you're not a consultant or a banker, you've failed. That means that you're not good enough, and like you should be doing these things. And if we can just recognize how backwards that statement is, I think kids would be so much more aligned with what they want to do, and I hope just happier in general, because to me that's what really matters.
Yeah, no, just having a life filled with purpose, lined up with your values, like what an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy that's my life. And so one of the things I'm sure some of our leaders are thinking, well, hold on, Tarik's at Accenture and he's working at this part time. Oh my God, how do you handle it all? And I know you just got engaged. How does
Yeah.
your fiance handle this?
Oh God, yeah, and I'll look at the camera for, hey, I so appreciate you, because I think I couldn't do this without her and her support, and she's always behind the scenes, but it means the world to have that. And I think everyone's got their thing that they love to do, whether it's a sport or an instrument or writing or coding or whatever it is. To me, it's coaching.
Yeah.
And I think when you find something that you love doing, you will find the time to do it. So I'll do my sessions in the evenings.
Yeah.
I block out part of my Saturday to do sessions. I have this is a big deal. I've golfed less this year than I have in my entire life, but I feel more balanced. I feel like I'm doing stuff that I love doing. So we make it work, and it's been very transformative for me to be in a spot where I can coach people like that, and I'm super grateful for that part of my life right now.
Fantastic. And one thing I know that you've also been working on, I'm on LinkedIn. That's the only social media that I'm on, and
Yeah.
I see that you're starting to build your brand. So you know, and again, one thing what we do with our leaders is have them start to build their brand. So what are you doing to build your brand? How are you thinking about building your brand on LinkedIn?
We just talked about the questions I'd asked myself 10 years ago, right? Around purpose and what I want to do. And if no one could critique you and you had no chance of failing, what would you want to do? I think when it comes to building a brand, it's a similar type of thing, because when you build a brand, you got to be really aligned, again, just with your own values and the impact you want to have, and who do you want to be known as when people think of Tarik Ali. And so I think step one for me was, hey, if I could guarantee myself that this brand would be successful, that no one's going to laugh at my LinkedIn posts, right? Because I'd never posted on LinkedIn before. If I can guarantee that, hey, what would I love to be known for? And a lot of my brand is about coaching. It's everything we've talked about today. That is what I want to be known for. So you start there. And from there, it was, I think, kind of like dipping my toe in the water. If you look at my first few posts last year, linking an HBR article, pretty safe. It's not really Tarik's opinion, but I'll comment on it. Couple infographics, more of my opinion. The biggest journey here, Chris, was me finding my voice and trusting my voice as I developed as a coach, to now where I'm filming full videos, where I'm staring a camera in the face and I've got the setup, and I'm basically giving my raw point of view on things that I think a lot of people don't talk about, because who walks around talking about burnout, or who walks around talking about how common it is for people to have these limiting beliefs? Who walks around talking about, this whole thing around affluenza, where it's, hey, we put so much value in external measures and success and achievements that we lose sight of our own internal values. And I want to be known as a person that can be authentic with those topics. And so I over the past year, I've really started to carve out that as my brand, where I feel very comfortable being open, because I've got to be open for people to trust me as a coach, right? If I'm going to ask that of you, I've got to be open as well. And it's just very aligned to the brand that I want to have. And I'm sure there's people that watch some of what I put out there and say, well, what is this? But that's okay, right? Because we talked about this earlier. If you're trying to please everybody and align with everybody, then you're not really aligning with anyone. So a couple things, like get clear again on what you care about, if there was no chance of failing. And then I took a very dip my toe in the water type approach over some time.
Yeah, and I love as well just the space that you're going after is kind of not a huge niche, and that's powerful. Like the space that we're going after, really high achieving, big dreaming, entrepreneurial, people want to be leaders, in university. It's a pretty small niche of really, and so it's being all that to that group. So it's for you, it's that type of group, in their careers, and then struggling, and what do they need? And again, achieving at the greatest level and struggling, and that's actually what it is to be human. Is both of these things, the dark and the light, and that's one of the things that we discover in coaching is just, again, how that you just don't know what people are going through, and that's one of the great things about coaching. And then you can really help people with what they're going through.
Yeah, and sometimes the question I get is, hey, Tarik, how is coaching different than therapy? And there's a few key differences. I think sometimes therapy, there's a connotation that, hey, there's something wrong that we need to fix. With coaching, like, if you're feeling this stuff, if you're working and you're feeling self-doubt because you're in a new role, there's nothing wrong with you, right? We're not trying to fix something that's broken. We're trying to free you up, right? And so I think that's a very, to me, an empowering distinction because I think it's something that's a key difference. We're not trying to go back into the past and figure out what's causing you to feel not good today. We're looking at you're here, you want to get there. What's the gap? Let's get after it together for however long we work together for.
Yeah, you're right. Therapy, how was your, family of origin and what happened? And those are good things to maybe discover. And I've certainly done some work in that area, and that's really, really powerful. But that's not coaching.
Yeah.
Sorry. And that's not coaching. And coaching is something different, actionable, powerful. How do we move forward? So, what did you need to change about yourself if you think about that person leaving our program to become the value creator you are now?
So I think student works for me because I did it for only 1 year.
Yeah.
Opened my eyes to, hey, this is what happens if you take a risk. This is epic. This is what you can become. But it doesn't complete the entire journey, right? And so now you've got, I'm entering third year and I'm like, okay, now I know what I can do. And now it's time to build the systems within me to be ready to take that next risk, right? I mean, I entered Student Works, but it's not that overnight I just felt, okay, I'm now a risk-loving person that's going to go into every single fire and all that, right? So again, so much changes when you're in university. I feel like every 6 months you wake up and you feel like a bit of a evolved person. And so I think Student Works really taught me that for me to add the most value, A, I've got to keep building trust with the people around me, but B, I've got to really stop assuming that, hey, just because these other 10 people are going path A, that's the right thing to do. I've got to really start thinking more for myself here on what I want my career to look like and match that up. We talked about the Dharma thing, right? What do you love doing? What are you good at? And what do people need? And if you can find that, then you're golden. So for me, it was about this journey of finding that. And I think a journey that everyone is on sometimes, and it takes a long time to find for a lot of people. And that's kind of been the path.
Awesome. So if you could eliminate one common challenge faced by business owners, what would it be and why?
Yeah. And I wrote it. It's good timing because I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago. Especially in the high growth startup space, when you are succeeding, you start with a group of say 3 founders, and your job is to be working on the business and very much in the business. And as you grow, delegation and letting go becomes so much more important for these founders. But it's their product, it's their baby, it's their whole life, and a lot of times it's hard to recognize that, hey, I'm too in the weeds, because we need people that can zoom out and work on the business. And we talked about, hey, these leaders sometimes don't have the space to work on themselves and identify like, hey, you know what, like, let me take a step back. What am I doing that's helping the company? What am I actually doing that's holding my team back? What am I doing that I don't want to be doing? And who do I need to evolve into for this company to hit the next level? And I think there's often a default resistance to resting.
Yes.
I think there's a default resistance to coming out of the business and working on the business, because there's a fear of, what if everything goes sideways if I leave for an hour to think about things? So I see that a lot, and I think a lot of the value that some of these founders get from something, whether they're doing coaching or just carving out time for themselves to work on the business, is they get a higher level view on things. And there's this perception that we're wired into sometimes that you have to grind at all costs for anything to ever work, and that rest is lazy. And what I've found is taking that rest, you're actually speeding your boat up.
Yeah.
There's this amazing story about the British rowing team in 2000. They had failed, never won a race for 80 years, and then they made one change in 2000, then they won gold. And the change was everything they did in their prep, everything they did in their strategy for every race. They asked the question, okay, if we do this, will it make the boat go faster?
Yeah.
And the thing I took away from that was, there's times where I actually need to rest and pause in order for the boat to go faster. If I keep going at it, I'm actually slowing down, and that's changed the game for me. And we do a lot of that work through our coaching as well.
Well, when I used to be an elite athlete, we overtrained
Yeah.
consistently, and now athletes are they're checking their lactic acid levels, they're checking their recovery. Okay, you're too tired, go swim down, get some rest. Like recovery is important as working out, and this works for business. And I think sports analogies are so powerful for business and people performing at the best levels because they're performing at the best athletic level.
Yeah.
And I think that's just such a great thing to bring in. So I know we could talk all day. This is fantastic. So and so I know you had a hard out that I think I ran by. So last question: what would you say to someone who's considering joining StudentWorks?
I thought we were 20 minutes in, and I just looked at my watch, and I can't believe
I know.
we're an hour in. This was a ton of fun. If you are considering this program, what I would say is you're entering what was to me a perfect balance of a safe place to learn, but also enough risk where you learn a lot about yourself. And I think you're surrounded by great people like Chris and the coaches. And there's no way you're going to enter this program the same person that you come out. And I think the lessons you learn through this type of experience of running your own business at StudentWorks will stay with you for a long time. I was in the program 10 years ago, and I still to this day have a crystal clear memory of so many stories and learnings from things that actually happened on the job at StudentWorks. And those are things I'm going to carry with me for a long time. To me, it was a great return on the investment of my time. And I regret that I only did it for 1 year. But it's awesome to see, Chris, what you've built, what you're continuing to build, and the type of people you're attracting is super inspiring.
Well, thank you very much. And I was sharing earlier that I just love seeing all of our alumni progressing and doing so well. And again, we take it as much of a win when someone breaks a record in the business as, hey, gets another promotion or more success outside. Like, that's really huge for the entire team and all the people who are creating the incredible success that we're having. So, Tarik, thanks so much for taking the time again out of your crazy busy schedule. And I'm so appreciative.
Cheers. Thanks, Chris.